Welcome everyone to our second series in our agency workflow webinars. My name is Liana. I sit on our educate team here at Ceros. Joined with me, who will be the star of the show today, is Adrian. Just wanted to let everyone know that if you have any questions throughout our webinar, please feel free to write them in the Q&A box. We will answer them all at the end. This is also being recorded, so we will send it out in the follow-up email tomorrow morning, as well as posted on Educate. But I'm very excited to dive into the creative secrets that we have here at Ceros with Adrian. So without further ado, I will pass it over to you to get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Liana. Welcome everyone. Happy Friday, Junior. So I'm Adrian, and I've been working at Ceros for almost 8 years now, right? I started on the professional services team, first as a designer working on paid engagements, and then I also switched into a little bit more of a strategist and consultant. And I'm currently working on the Ceros Educate team, continuing to provide education and consultative services to our clients. So for today, I'm going to start out with a comparison of workflows, kind of looking at the teams in the process through the lens of both agencies and Ceros. And then we'll dive into some of the systems and efficiencies that I find works well when using the Ceros suite. And that will benefit both us and our clients. And then we'll talk through two really cool case studies that demonstrate what that process and what that workflow looked like in practice, and also share how we leveled up our skills. And then we'll finally wrap up with a little bit of Q&A. So like Liana said, feel free to use that Q&A box and submit any questions, and I'll do my best to answer those questions toward the end. So let's start out with teams and process. So comparing traditional agencies and service workflows, this isn't really going to be us kind of criticizing agency workflows, but more of an observation and analysis. Because we understand that every team is different and every team has very different goals. So we'll look through what worked best for the Ceros team and what we adapted from agency workflows within a diagram of a typical project lifecycle. So you can see that, or from when agency workflows tend to be a little bit longer timelines ranging from months to a year, or sometimes even longer than that. And this can lead to teams working more within silos and require a lot of handoffs going from phase to phase. So, and some teams also have individuals that focus mainly on specific phases of a project lifecycle, which is not a bad thing, right? You don't need to be a jack of all trades. However, projects can come down the pipeline with little to no wiggle room for iterations or adjustments later on. So let's compare that to a Ceros workflow from the professional services team. And you'll notice that all the key players are involved from the beginning of the project. So everyone is aware of the direction and everyone is on the same page. And because of this, our project timelines on average ranged between days and a few weeks, from start to finish. So we were able to leverage the power of the Ceros suite to really streamline production, such as giving the power to publish projects right away, right from the design phase, or push updates really quickly without needing or relying on a really robust development team. We still have developers, like you can see that they're down here, but they were more of a conditional stakeholder when we came across projects that required a little bit more functionality than what Ceros could do natively. So because everyone is involved from the beginning, each person has the opportunity to bring ideas or concerns to the table within their area of focus. And that minimizes the need of additional internal handoffs and ultimately just streamlines overall production. So our production, or our approach is very different. But you can also keep in mind that we didn't handle things like full campaigns or projects that required us to define an entire brand identity. And that's just a small part of how we evolved to trim down project timelines. So what else did we do then? Well, here are four impactful systems and efficiencies that we adopted within the professional services team. And we'll start out with the unified workflow. So the unified workflow was our approach that we applied across all of our projects, all of our client engagements. And the unified workflow follows agile principles to really empower our team and our customers to be collaborative, accountable, flexible, and of course, creative. So between the initial engagement and the project wrap up, every project followed four specific phases. So the discovery phase is where everyone would all come together to determine the project approach. This phase would include things like the creative brief, collaborative brainstorms, and even sharing some examples from our Inspire site, which ended up acting kind of like a menu that gives us a better understanding of what success could look like for them. And then we take those findings and go into the conception phase. Mhm. This is the key thing for the conception phase is that everyone is working simultaneously. So we would create the content outlines, the wireframes, mood boards, and all of that is based on the previous discussions that we had within the discovery phase, and then we'll pitch that back to the client. And once that's approved, we can then go into the creation phase. So all of the ideas from the conception phase are brought together within the Ceros studio. And since we created the wireframe and the mood boards within Ceros already, the creation process is super simple, right? It could just be a matter of replacing assets or fine tuning. And that gave us so much more room to be more playful and be more creative with things like testing out animations, interactions, object states, and even just pushing the boundaries of what we thought Ceros could do. So after the creation phase, right, we'll just wrap up with the completion phase. And at this point, we're really just working with their web team to implement any of the final touches, such as um, implementing a vanity domain or putting together a tracking pixel. So just wrapping everything up. So up next, we have markup. And in the earlier years, we had a fairly manual process of collecting feedback using things like Google Sheets or email. It was really challenging to pinpoint where changes needed to be made, and it required a lot of clarity and descriptions or screenshots. And then we developed markup here at Ceros, which made that process so much easier and a lot more efficient. Our markup tool it's a feedback collection tool that allows you to simply upload things like images, video, PDFs, websites. And in our case, we used the preview and the publish URL links. And then you can just continue to browse and engage the piece of content as normal. And when you want to, you can switch over to the comments and indicate where you want those changes to be made. And that made it so much easier for us to keep track of what changes to make, where it was, and what had already been completed. So moving on to our foundation, and you can kind of think of the foundation as sort of like a design system, but instead of applying to one client or one project or application, our foundation was applied across all of our engagements, all of our clients, all of our projects, and everything that we created within the Sarah Studio. So our foundation acted as a boilerplate for everything that we created, including the types of components that we create and how we built them with interactivity, um, animation types and timings, layer organization, and naming conventions. So this was crucial to our success as a design team, since we can have many hands kind of touching the project, and also many projects running simultaneously. And within our team, we were also fairly strict with this in order to reinforce the message of our best practices of the Ceros suite, kind of like speaking in one voice or one tone. And this helped with streamlining any handoffs, so it would be really easy for another designer to pick up where anyone left off. And then when wrapping up a project, especially one that we anticipated that the client would be updating on their own, we would record custom video tutorials, or CVTs for short. So our goal as a company at Ceros is to get clients to be self-sufficient and not really rely on us to create or make updates to projects for them as often. So these custom video tutorials allowed us to continue to create high quality work while also giving the client full direction and confidence to do things on their own. And this can range from simple text updates to expanding on their entire project. So just to recap, right? We followed a unified workflow. We streamlined feedback using markup. We had a foundation, kind of a standard approach of how of all of our projects, and then we ensured scalability with the custom video tutorials. So throughout the entire lifespan of the professional services team, we also looked at uh, any customer engagements as learning opportunities. So let's dive into a couple of case studies, starting with IQVIA. And IQVIA is the leading global provider of advanced analytics, technology solutions, and clinical research services to the life and science industry. When we first started to engage with IQVIA, they were brand new to creating interactive content. They were also going through a pretty big merger and rebrand at the time. So all of their internal design resources were pulled toward that effort, which limited their ability to dedicate time to create content on their own. And we were brought in to help build their content for an upcoming event, as well as helping to reimagine their brand for content on their website. And while not necessarily a major hindrance, there were a handful of challenges, or we'll call them opportunities, that we encountered while working with Akivia initially. So there was a race to complete the project before their upcoming event, as well as line up with their rebrand launch. They were new to creating interactive content, so a majority of the engagement with them was around proving the value of the Ceros suite and also the impact that it could have on their content. They had limited design resources that were kind of dedicated more toward the rebrand, and since they were going through that rebrand and merger, a lot of the existing resources for for their brand was still being revamped in parallel to us creating content for them. So our team took this as an opportunity to come up with a really high impact and a really scalable approach to their digital content that would be created within Ceros. IQVIA shared some content that they regularly produce, and we identified a few trends within their recurring content, such as thought leadership, reports, data exploration. And then from that, we developed a strategy that would reinforce their brand within micro-content modules throughout their .com. So we helped develop these boilerplate modules that introduce the themes of chevrons, arcs, and subway maps. These modules would be applied across all of their interactive pieces with the goal of making content quicker and making content easier to digest for their audience. So as a result, right, the Ceros team was able to create content faster, and it also unlocked more opportunities. So we could expand to things like content hubs, events, or even full microsites. And they saw so much increased interest that they had to start to expand their own design team to tackle creating content within Ceros. And that led us to rely on Ceros less, but we think that's okay, right? That's a win for us. Of course, we worked with their designers to enable them to continue to use these boilerplates that we had set up through things like custom video tutorials. So looking back, the Ceros team learned a lot about how we can kind of embody and also educate the concept of a crawl, walk, run approach in order to build confidence, inspire, and enlighten, and scale smarter. So perhaps starting with quick win micro content, and then building into a library of use cases and modules, and then expanding to longer form content. So let's move on to another case study for Tenable. Tenable is the cybersecurity company that empowers organizations to understand and reduce cyber risk. We started working on a ton of great projects together since they signed on with us in the earlier parts of 2018. And being a tech company, they were already familiar with creating digital content. So we didn't need to push for education or proving the value of Ceros as much. And after creating a few traditional pieces of content like reports, content hubs, and data explorers, Tenable came to the table with the idea to create a holiday card in a game. which their team was already familiar with the core of the Ceros products, but they wanted to push the boundaries a little bit. And this is a really cool idea. So gamification and holiday cards are great use cases, though it's rare to see those combined. Um, there were a few challenges that we saw. We started at the beginning of October, so it only gave us about a month to complete from start to finish. And it was a very different use case for them, right? It was a gamified experience as well as a holiday card. So taking a look at that, what they were looking to do was a fairly advanced game. And just for reference, the most advanced game that we had created at that point was something akin to like a whack-a-mole game or a matching game, which uses more static placement of elements. So it was even new for us, but we were definitely up for the challenge. We ran a few ideas past them, starting with, witches and zombies, which was really cute and campy. But we ultimately landed on the kind of neon city approach that would line up a little bit better with our industry. And we knew they wanted some sort of scoring component. So we had our creative team and our development team kind of working simultaneously in order to keep aligned with in case there were any changes in direction. And because of that, the build itself only took, I think, 3.5 days, maybe 4 days at most. So really, really quick kind of turnaround time. And the game was extremely well received, right? It increased engagement with their audience, and it also opened up a brand new opportunity for them to create holiday cards and games each year. And as an added bonus, there was kind of a hidden theme that was connected to their brand. So the game itself is difficult, right? With ghosts flying across the screen at different speeds, it can be overwhelming. So their audience can experience the challenges of protecting themselves against cyber attacks firsthand, and that would make them more inclined to use Tenable to help protect against any threats. So I thought that was a really cool connection there. So even this was a really new idea and a new approach for us. So we use this as an opportunity to explore, experiment, and really push the boundaries of what we had originally thought was possible within Ceros. And we also recognized what steps we needed to take in order to work on a project of this level of complexity. Really cool example there. So we understand that it can be intimidating to hop into the Sarah suite and start creating content or adapting your workflow. Luckily, we have a ton of great resources on our Educate site where you can find useful articles, community discussion boards, courses, and even these webinars that are happening each and every week. So you can also try out some new skills and techniques within our creative challenges. Just a little shameless plug here. I'm actually hosting this month's creative challenge where you can submit a digital movie poster. So definitely feel free to check that out. I also want to encourage you to check out our creative AI assistant, Gemma, which can be a game changer when it comes to brainstorming or creating content. So that wraps up our second session with the Revolutionizing Agency Workflow series. And I think it'd be a good time to open the floor to questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adrian, for walking through that. It was so insightful to see how we on the Ceros side go through our workflow and that creative process, and also see those wonderful examples from some of our clients. We do have a couple good questions in our Q&A chat, and of course, if anyone else has any, definitely feel free to send them now. But the first question here is, how do you approach mobile designs in Ceros?
Ooh, that's a good question. Mobile designs and serves. Well, obviously, it definitely starts with the brief, right? We'll ask the client what their distribution methods look like. We'll even directly ask them, do you want desktop version or do you want desktop and mobile variants for this? Um, so from those answers, right, we can then frame our approach within the creation or the conception phases to plan out our approach for a project. So if we're creating something that's more horizontal, we need to figure out ways to translate that into a more narrow kind of screen or canvas. Um, a lot of content that you'll create is pretty easy and stackable. Um, but when you're working within a project, I think it's best to start out with one variant. So say you start with the desktop version first. Complete that to around 80 or 95 or 90 to 95%. So you have all of your assets on the canvas, you have your animations applied and interactions are programmed within the hotspots, and all you need to do is probably update some text later on. Luckily, the text syncs between the desktop and the mobile variants, so it's a really easy adjustment there. Um, and then once you create the touchscreen device variant from that, it carries over all of those properties from one variant to the other. So all you need to do is basically just reflow some of the content so it fits within a narrower screen. Um, and then you'll also want to kind of test out what it looks like within the actual device. So you can send a preview link to yourself via direct message or an email and actually view it on the device you intended to be viewed on. So you can get a better understanding of the sizing and the spacing and how everything feels. And since it's a live preview, right, you make adjustments within the Ceros Studio and it updates live within your device also. So I hope that
Awesome.
answered the question.
Yeah,
Great question though.
definitely. And I think it's also really great advice for both our agency clients and our regular company clients, not only to, work on one layout at the same time or at the beginning, but also test your experience on those different layouts.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Our next question here is, how do you maintain quality and consistency across clients and projects?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. It really depends on your team, right? So for us, we had a fairly robust onboarding process. Um, Anyone that was brought onto the team, we would need to have the understanding of what the platform was capable of doing and familiarize themselves with things like creative solutions. So we would assign them tasks or during the onboarding process, we would expose them to things like uh, easy, intermediate, and advanced modules that kind of scaled up their skill. And then once they were brought onto paid projects or paid engagements, we would maintain sort of that quality through regular check-ins, regularly scheduled check-ins every single day. We had something called midday production reviews or MPRs for short. And the designer would list out sort of what their priorities were, any roadblocks for the day, and also a preview link of what they were working on. So any art director or senior designer can come in and not necessarily like look after their work or like micromanage them, but more of like a quality assurance sort of approach. So they would look at things like functionality or visual inconsistencies like interactions, animations, or alignment. And that would just continue throughout the entire life cycle of a project and just became standard practice for us.
Awesome. Yeah, another really great tip there, having that preview link since it is consistently updating in real time. So any change as they're making it with interactions, animations, and being able to see, from point A to B is really awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, that is all the questions that we have for today. So thank you, Adrian, for again walking us through this very insightful webinar. Thank you all so much for joining. We love having everyone on our webinars and a part of our community. So we hope to see you at our next one. Like Adrian said, our creative challenge is up for April. So I'm very excited to see everyone's movie posters. But again, thank you all so much for joining. We hope to see you at the next webinar. And one quick thing before we wrap up, I also just wanted to share that we are very excited to announce our referral program where you can refer not only your colleagues that have not used any of the tools in the Ceros suite, but other folks at other companies, friends, whoever it may be. Just to give you guys some background, This initiative was created and really inspired by all the growth we've seen, and as a thank you to our loyal customers. So we really just want to spread the word about Ceros, introduce again those colleagues, your friends, just to see if there may be a fit for them to use our suite. And with this program, you are eligible to earn some money with it. So there are some cash rewards, which I know everyone loves. But again, thank you guys so much for coming. We'll send the recording and the deck and also that referral program link in our follow-up email tomorrow morning. But I hope you all have a great rest of your Thursdays, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, everyone.